The featherweight bout between Jeremy Stephens and Calvin Kattar. This was a great fight, and I was super excited for this one. Jeremy Stephens comes out, and he's looking good early, man, firing off leg kicks, and, just kind of mixing things up a little bit better than Kattar. Kattar's much more reliant on his boxing. Those leg kicks were really paying dividends, and you were able to see that Stephens was putting the pressure on Kattar. I really felt as if Stephens won the first round, but you could kind of see that Kattar, towards the end of the first, was starting to get his timing and his distance down a little bit, starting to implement the head movement and starting to get into a rhythm, and really started to see that at the start of the second. You could just see that when Kattar started timing Stephens up coming in, that it was gonna be trouble for Stephens. Stephens is aggressive, man. He came in on that shit, and Kattar would just sit down and counter him. And his hands were just so much more fluid, and he started ripping to the body and to the head. And one of the things I like about Kattar is he attacks the body with the hands. Especially, he'll throw that jab to your body all the time. He always keeps you guessing. And it's not just that Kattar's boxing. It's like when you see a lot of guys throw power combos and stuff, it's like they're throwing these massive punches and overextending a little bit. But like when Calvin Kattar boxes, every single shot that he hits you with is setting the next one up. Like he's tilting your head a little bit in this direction and coming through and catching you here. His hands are setting up. One punch is setting up the next constantly. And that's the difference between Calvin Kattar and a lot of the guys that he's going to fight in that division. High level boxing. Really fucking good with his hands and really precise. When it keeps guys guessing, man, He's a real problem to deal with, and you got to see him kind of overcome a true veteran in Jeremy Stephens. Jeremy Stephens tried to engage in the clinch a little bit in the second round when he realized Kattar was getting ahead in the strikes. And then Kattar steps in with that fucking beautiful, beautiful elbow and puts Stephens out, gets on top of him, and finishes the fight. So an excellent performance from Calvin Kattar, and I'm sure a pretty gratifying one, especially if you consider the fact that Stephens missed weight by 4.5 pounds. That's a lot. I know there's a lot of shit going on. I don't know what happened with all the weight cutting stuff. Jeremy Stephens is a real veteran and a professional, so I don't know. I don't know what happened with the weight cut. But regardless, Calvin Kattar goes out and beats one of the most dangerous guys in the division when he comes in 4.5 pounds overweight. Pretty impressive. Knocks him out cold. Calvin Kattar's scary, man, especially when you consider what happened against Zabit in that third round. And Calvin Kattar's, this is what I mean with the 145-pound division. It's in an interesting spot right now because Kattar's knocked out guys like Burgos. I don't know if the fight with Emmett makes sense. Maybe a fight against Yair Rodriguez right now because I think Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski are probably going to rematch. Brian Ortega probably needs to fight Zabit to figure out who the number one contender is after that. And if you're Calvin Kattar, you don't want to have too much inactivity. But there's also the Korean Zombie sitting there, man. Korean Zombie versus Calvin Kattar might not be a bad fight. Yair Rodriguez is in the mix. I mean, there's a lot going on at 145, but Kattar needs to take on a fight that's going to push him up in the rankings. I'll tell you what, man, I wouldn't hate a fight against the Korean Zombie. I really wouldn't. That's not a terrible fight. Who? I got to look at. I can't think off the top of my head. I think Yair Rodriguez just beat Jeremy Stephens too, right, in his last bout. So that fight makes sense. Those are two guys that are likely going to keep it on the feet and get to see a little bit of boxing versus a more of a Rodriguez is so much more willing to throw kicks and he's so much more versatile he's got a more varied attack than Kattar. But then Kattar's boxing knowledge and just it's so deep, it's an interesting matchup. I wouldn't hate Yair Rodriguez versus Calvin Kattar. I wouldn't hate Korean Zombie versus Calvin Kattar. There's a lot of guys that Kattar can fight, and I think that he has real potential to work into the top 5, top 3, and maybe challenge for the title at one point. I mean, he's got a lot of promise.